11 Strategies to become the best version of yourself. Picture this. You wake up tomorrow morning and something has fundamentally shifted. The person staring back at you in the mirror isn't just another day older. They're measurably stronger, wiser, more resilient than they were yesterday. The challenges that used to overwhelm you now feel manageable. The setbacks that used to crush your spirit now fuel your determination. The opinions of others that used to control your emotions now bounce off you like rain on armor. This isn't fantasy. This is what happens when you stop living reactively and start living according to principles that have transformed lives for over 2,000 years. I'm talking about becoming the architect of your own character, the master of your own mind, and the author of your own story. But here's what most people get wrong about self-improvement. They think it's about adding more to their lives, more habits, more goals, more stuff. The ancient Stoics knew better. True transformation isn't about addition, it's about subtraction. It's about stripping away everything that doesn't serve your highest self and building an unshakable foundation of wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline. Today, I'm going to share with you 11 strategies rooted in Stoic philosophy that will fundamentally change how you approach every aspect of your life. These aren't feel-good platitudes or temporary motivation. These are battle-tested principles that helped Marcus Aurelius lead an empire, Epictetus rise from slavery to become one of history's greatest teachers, and Seneca maintain his integrity in the corrupt halls of Roman power. More importantly, they're going to help you become the person you've always known you could be. But I need to warn you about something. These strategies require you to take complete responsibility for your life. No more blaming circumstances, other people, or bad luck for where you are. No more waiting for the perfect moment or the right opportunity. The Stoics believed that every single day, every single moment is an opportunity to practice virtue and build character. That means your transformation starts right now, not tomorrow, not next week, not when conditions are perfect. The word philosophy literally means love of wisdom, but Stoicism takes it further. It's not just about understanding wisdom, it's about living it. Every strategy I'm about to share with you is designed to be implemented immediately. You don't need special equipment, expensive courses, or perfect circumstances. You just need the willingness to look honestly at yourself and commit to the daily practice of becoming better. So, if you're ready to stop making excuses, stop waiting for motivation, and start building the unshakable character that will carry you through any storm life throws at you, then stay with me. Because by the end of this video, you'll have a complete blueprint for transforming yourself from the inside out. The Stoics weren't armchair philosophers debating abstract concepts. They were practical men and women who faced real challenges, real losses, real setbacks, and discovered principles that allowed them to not just survive, but thrive. Marcus Aurelius wrote his Meditations while leading military campaigns. Epictetus developed his teachings while living as a slave. Seneca practiced his philosophy while navigating the dangerous politics of imperial Rome. These weren't people living in ivory towers, they were people just like you, trying to figure out how to live well in an uncertain world. What they discovered was that happiness, success, and fulfillment don't come from external circumstances. They come from how you respond to those circumstances. They come from the character you build through daily choices, the wisdom you develop through reflection, and the resilience you forge through facing difficulties with courage and grace. This is what it truly means to level up your life. Not to change your circumstances, but to change yourself so profoundly that no circumstance can shake your inner peace or derail your progress toward becoming your best self. The first strategy is the foundation of everything else we're going to discuss, and it's also the most challenging because it requires you to fundamentally change how you think about control. Strategy number 1 is to master your thoughts by understanding what you can and cannot control. This is the cornerstone of Stoic philosophy, and until you truly grasp this concept, you'll continue to waste enormous amounts of mental and emotional energy on things that are completely outside your influence. Epictetus taught that there are only two categories of things in this world: things that are up to you and things that are not up to you. That's it. Everything else is just a subcategory of one of these two fundamental divisions. What's up to you? Your thoughts, your judgments, your decisions, your actions, your responses, and your character. What's not up to you? Everything else. Other people's actions, the weather, the economy, the past, the future, your reputation, and even the outcomes of your own efforts. Now, your mind is probably rebelling against this idea right now. You're thinking, but surely I have some influence over my reputation, over other people, over outcomes. And you're right, you do have influence. But influence is not control. You can act with excellence, treat people with respect, and work toward your goals with dedication, but you cannot control whether people recognize your excellence, whether they return your respect, or whether your efforts produce the outcomes you want. This distinction between influence and control is where most people get stuck in cycles of frustration, anxiety, and disappointment. They pour their energy into trying to control outcomes instead of focusing entirely on controlling their own thoughts, decisions, and actions. It's like trying to control the wind instead of adjusting your sails. Here's how you start mastering this principle today. Every time you feel stressed, anxious, angry, or frustrated, stop and ask yourself this question: is what I'm upset about something I can directly control? If the answer is no, then you have two choices. You can continue wasting your energy on something outside your control, or you can redirect that energy towards something you can control, your response. Let's say you're stuck in traffic and you're going to be late for an important meeting. You cannot control the traffic. You cannot control whether your boss will be understanding. You cannot control whether this affects your reputation. What you can control is your response. You can choose to spend the time in the car preparing mentally for the meeting. You can choose to call ahead and communicate professionally about the delay. You can choose to learn from this experience and leave earlier in the future. You can choose to remain calm and focused instead of arriving at the meeting frazzled and apologetic. This isn't about becoming passive or fatalistic. It's about becoming strategically focused on where your power actually lies. When you stop trying to control the uncontrollable, you free up enormous amounts of mental and emotional energy to excel in the areas where you actually have power. The Stoics had a daily practice for this. Every morning they would remind themselves of what was and wasn't under their control. Every evening they would review the day and identify moments when they wasted energy on things outside their control. This isn't a one-time realization. It's a daily discipline that gradually rewrites how your mind processes challenges and setbacks. Most people live their entire lives as victims of their circumstances because they never learn this fundamental truth. They blame their unhappiness on their job, their relationships, their health, their finances, or their past. But you cannot be a victim and be in control at the same time. The moment you accept complete responsibility for your thoughts, judgments, and responses, you become the author of your own story, regardless of what chapters life has written for you so far. Strategy number 2 is to embrace discomfort intentionally. This goes against every instinct your brain has developed to keep you safe and comfortable. But comfort is the enemy of growth. The Stoics understood that strength, resilience, and character are not built in moments of ease. They're forged in the fire of voluntary challenge. Modern life has become incredibly comfortable compared to what humans experience throughout most of history, and this comfort is making us soft. We have climate control, abundant food, entertainment on demand, and solutions for every minor inconvenience. But our brains and bodies are designed to grow stronger through challenge, not weaker through ease. When we avoid all discomfort, we actually become less capable of handling the inevitable discomforts that life will throw at us. The Stoics practiced something called voluntary hardship. They would deliberately expose themselves to cold, hunger, physical exertion, and other challenges, not because they enjoyed suffering, but because they understood that regular exposure to controlled discomfort would prepare them for uncontrolled discomfort. Seneca would sleep on the floor periodically to remind himself that losing his wealth wouldn't destroy him. Marcus Aurelius would wake before dawn to handle his imperial duties, not because he had to, but because it built discipline and character. This doesn't mean you should make your life unnecessarily difficult or engage in masochistic practices. It means you should strategically choose challenges that build the specific qualities you want to develop. If you want to build physical resilience, you might take cold showers, exercise regularly, or walk instead of drive when possible. If you want to build mental resilience, you might meditate daily, read challenging books, or engage in difficult conversations. If you want to build emotional resilience, you might practice public speaking, ask for what you want directly, or have honest conversations about problems instead of avoiding them. The key is to make these challenges voluntary and progressive. Start small and gradually increase the difficulty. The goal isn't to prove how tough you are, it's to expand your comfort zone systematically so that when life throws you genuine hardships, you have the strength and resilience to handle them with grace. Here's what happens when you start embracing discomfort intentionally. First, you develop what psychologists call self-efficacy, the belief that you can handle whatever comes your way. Every time you choose the harder path and succeed, you build evidence for yourself that you're stronger than you thought. Second, you become less controlled by your impulses and emotions. When you're used to doing things that feel difficult, you're less likely to be derailed by temporary discomfort or inconvenience. Third, you start to see challenges as opportunities for growth rather than threats to avoid. Most people spend their entire lives trying to minimize discomfort, but this strategy actually makes life more uncomfortable in the long run because you become increasingly fragile and less capable of handling normal life challenges. When you embrace discomfort intentionally, you become anti-fragile. You don't just survive challenges, you become stronger because of them. Think about the most resilient people you know. They're not people who have had easy lives. They're people who have faced challenges and chosen to grow from them rather than be defeated by them. They've learned that temporary discomfort is the price of long-term strength, and they're willing to pay that price daily. Strategy number 3 is to practice daily reflection with ruthless honesty. The unexamined life is not worth living, but most people are afraid to examine their lives honestly because they might not like what they find. The Stoics believed that self-awareness is the foundation of all wisdom, and self-awareness requires the courage to look honestly at your thoughts, actions, and motivations without making excuses or shifting blame. Seneca had a beautiful evening practice where he would review his entire day like a judge examining evidence. He would ask himself what he did well, what he could have done better, what he learned, and how he could improve tomorrow. But this wasn't self-flagellation or harsh self-criticism. It was the loving but firm assessment of someone committed to continuous growth. Most people avoid this kind of honest self-reflection because they confuse self-awareness with self-judgment. They think that acknowledging their mistakes or weaknesses means they're bad people. But the Stoics understood that mistakes and weaknesses are simply information. They're data points that tell you where you need to focus your improvement efforts. You cannot fix what you will not acknowledge, and you cannot grow in areas where you refuse to see the need for growth. Here's how to implement this practice starting tonight. Before you go to sleep, spend 10 minutes reviewing your day. Ask yourself these questions. What did I do today that aligned with my values? What did I do that went against my values? What triggered strong emotions in me, and how did I respond? What could I have done better? What did I learn about myself? What do I want to focus on improving tomorrow? Write down your answers. Don't just think about them, write them down. Writing forces you to be more honest and specific than just thinking. It also creates a record that you can review over time to see patterns and track your progress. But here's the crucial part. Approach this reflection with compassion, not condemnation. You're not trying to beat yourself up for your mistakes. You're trying to understand yourself better so you can make better choices tomorrow. Think of yourself as a scientist studying your own behavior with curiosity, rather than a judge pronouncing sentences. The Stoics also practiced morning reflection, setting intentions for how they wanted to show up that day. Marcus Aurelius would remind himself each morning of the challenges he might face and how he wanted to respond to them. He would prepare himself mentally for difficult people, unexpected setbacks, and opportunities to practice virtue. This combination of morning intention setting and evening reflection creates a powerful feedback loop that accelerates your growth. You're not just going through life reactively, you're approaching each day with purpose and learning from each experience. Over time, this practice develops what the Stoics called wisdom, the ability to make good decisions based on clear thinking and honest self-assessment. Most people repeat the same mistakes year after year because they never take the time to honestly examine their patterns and behaviors. They stay stuck in the same cycles of reactivity, making the same poor choices and wondering why their lives don't change. Daily reflection breaks these cycles by bringing unconscious patterns into conscious awareness, where they can be changed. Strategy number 4 is to focus entirely on process rather than outcomes. This might be the hardest strategy for most people to accept because we live in a results-obsessed culture that measures success almost entirely by outcomes. But the Stoics understood that outcomes are largely outside your control, while the process, your effort, preparation, and execution is entirely within your control. When you focus on outcomes, you set yourself up for frustration and disappointment because outcomes depend on factors beyond your influence. Other people's decisions, timing, luck, market conditions, and countless other variables can affect whether your efforts produce the results you want. But when you focus on process, you can succeed every single day, regardless of what happens around you. This doesn't mean outcomes don't matter. Of course they matter, but outcomes are the natural result of excellent process sustained over time. When you focus on doing the right things in the right way consistently, good outcomes tend to follow. But when you focus on outcomes at the expense of process, you often end up with neither good process nor good outcomes. Think about an athlete preparing for competition. They cannot control whether they win or lose because that depends partially on how well their opponents perform. But they can control their training, their preparation, their mindset, and their effort during competition. A process-focused athlete trains with excellence regardless of whether they're favored to win or expected to lose. An outcome-focused athlete's motivation and performance fluctuate based on their perceived chances of winning. Here's how this applies to your daily life. Instead of setting goals like, I want to lose 20 pounds, set process goals like, I will exercise for 30 minutes, 5 days per week, and eat vegetables with every meal. Instead of, I want to get promoted, focus on, I will complete all my projects on time, contribute valuable ideas in meetings, and help my colleagues succeed. Instead of, I want to have a better relationship, focus on, I will listen more than I speak, express appreciation daily, and address problems directly and kindly. The beautiful thing about process goals is that you can achieve them regardless of external circumstances. You can eat vegetables even if you don't lose weight immediately. You can do excellent work even if the promotion goes to someone else. You can be a loving partner even if your relationship goes through difficult periods. This shift from outcome focus to process focus also eliminates a lot of anxiety and pressure. When you're focused on outcomes, every setback feels like failure. When you're focused on process, setbacks are just information that helps you adjust and improve your approach. You're not trying to control the wind, you're learning to be an excellent sailor regardless of weather conditions. The Stoics believed that the only true failure is the failure to give your best effort according to your values. Everything else is just feedback. When you embrace this mindset, you become unstoppable because your success is entirely within your control. You're no longer dependent on external validation, favorable conditions, or other people's choices to feel successful and fulfilled. Strategy number 5 is to cultivate virtue over victory. In a culture obsessed with winning, this strategy might sound weak or naive, but it's actually the path to a different kind of strength that external circumstances cannot touch. The Stoics identified 4 cardinal virtues: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. They believed that developing these qualities was more valuable than any external achievement because virtues are the only things that truly belong to you and cannot be taken away. Wisdom is the ability to see clearly, think rationally, and make good decisions based on truth rather than emotion or wishful thinking. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to do what's right despite fear. Justice is treating others fairly and contributing positively to your community. Temperance is self-discipline and moderation, the ability to control your impulses and desires. When you focus on developing these virtues instead of chasing external victories, something remarkable happens. You become genuinely confident because your sense of worth is based on who you are, not what you achieve. You become resilient because your peace of mind doesn't depend on circumstances going your way. You become genuinely successful because you're succeeding at the most important game, the game of becoming a person of character. Most people chase external victories, hoping they'll feel better about themselves, but external victories are temporary and conditional. You win today, you might lose tomorrow. You're successful in this area, you might fail in that area. But virtue is permanent and unconditional. Once you develop courage, you have it regardless of what happens around you. Once you develop wisdom, it guides you through any situation. Here's how to start prioritizing virtue over victory today. In every situation, instead of asking, "How can I win?" ask, "How can I be wise, courageous, just, and temperate?" When facing a conflict with someone, instead of focusing on being right, focus on being fair and kind. When dealing with a setback, instead of focusing on the unfairness of the situation, focus on responding with courage and grace. When tempted by immediate gratification, instead of just giving in, focus on practicing self-discipline. This doesn't mean you become passive or stop striving for excellence. The Stoics were often highly successful in external terms precisely because they focused on virtue. Marcus Aurelius was an effective emperor. Seneca was wealthy and influential. But their external success was a byproduct of their character, not their primary focus. When virtue is your priority, you make decisions based on what's right rather than what's advantageous. Paradoxically, this often leads to better long-term outcomes because people trust and respect those who consistently act with integrity. You build a reputation for reliability, honesty, and fairness that opens doors and creates opportunities. But even if focusing on virtue didn't lead to external success, it would still be the right choice because it leads to inner peace and genuine self-respect. You can sleep well at night knowing that you acted according to your values. You can look at yourself in the mirror with genuine pride, not because of what you accomplished, but because of who you chose to be. Strategy number 6 is to build anti-fragility by viewing obstacles as opportunities for growth. Most people try to avoid obstacles, setbacks, and challenges, but this approach makes you fragile. When difficulties inevitably arise, you're unprepared and overwhelmed. The Stoics developed a radically different approach. They learned to see obstacles not as things that prevented them from reaching their goals, but as the very path to their goals. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action." What stands in the way becomes the way. This isn't positive thinking or wishful thinking. It's a practical recognition that obstacles force you to develop qualities and capabilities you wouldn't develop otherwise. Challenges reveal weaknesses you need to address, teach you lessons you need to learn, and build strength you need for future difficulties. Think about it this way. If your goal is to become strong, you don't avoid heavy weights, you seek them out. If your goal is to become wise, you don't avoid difficult decisions, you embrace them as learning opportunities. If your goal is to develop character, you don't avoid moral challenges, you see them as chances to practice virtue. This requires a fundamental shift in how you interpret setbacks and difficulties. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "How is this helping me grow?" Instead of, "This isn't fair," think, "This is exactly the challenge I need to develop the qualities I want." Instead of, "I can't handle this," realize, "This is teaching me that I'm stronger than I thought." Every obstacle contains within it the seeds of an equivalent or greater benefit, but only if you approach it with the right mindset. Losing a job can force you to develop new skills or discover a career you love more. A relationship ending can teach you about your patterns and help you become a better partner. A health challenge can motivate you to take better care of yourself and appreciate what you have. A financial setback can teach you about money management and help you build more sustainable habits. But this transformation doesn't happen automatically. You have to actively look for the opportunity within the obstacle. You have to ask yourself what this challenge is trying to teach you and how you can use it to become stronger, wiser, or more virtuous. The Stoics had a practice called the discipline of desire, where they would actually desire obstacles and challenges because they saw them as opportunities for growth. They understood that a life without challenges is a life without growth, and a life without growth is not a life worth living. This doesn't mean you should seek out unnecessary difficulties or enjoy suffering. It means you should approach the inevitable difficulties of life with curiosity and determination rather than resentment and resistance. When you stop fighting against obstacles and start learning from them, you become anti-fragile. You don't just survive challenges, you become stronger because of them. Strategy number 7 is to practice negative visualization, but with balance and wisdom. This is one of the most misunderstood Stoic practices because people think it's about being pessimistic or dwelling on worst-case scenarios. Actually, it's about building gratitude, preparedness, and resilience by occasionally imagining the loss of things you value. The idea is simple but powerful. Periodically imagine losing your health, your job, your relationships, or your possessions. Not to make yourself anxious or depressed, but to appreciate what you have and prepare yourself mentally for the inevitable changes and losses that are part of life. Nothing lasts forever, and denying this reality makes you more fragile, not less. When you occasionally imagine losing something you value, several important things happen. First, you appreciate it more while you have it. Second, you prepare yourself mentally for the possibility of loss, which reduces the shock and devastation if loss actually occurs. Third, you realize that you could survive and even thrive without many of the things you think you can't live without. Seneca would periodically live as if he were poor, sleeping on the floor and eating simple food, to remind himself that poverty wouldn't destroy him. This wasn't masochism, it was mental preparation and gratitude practice. He appreciated his wealth more because he knew he could be happy without it. Here's how to practice this safely and beneficially. Once a week, spend a few minutes imagining the loss of something you value. Your health, your job, an important relationship, your home. Don't dwell on the details of how you might lose it, just imagine what your life would be like without it. Then ask yourself, how would I adapt? What would I learn? How would I find meaning and purpose? What aspects of my life would remain valuable? The goal isn't to become detached or stop caring about these things. The goal is to hold them lightly, to appreciate them fully while you have them, and to build confidence that you could handle their loss if necessary. This practice makes you both more grateful and more resilient. You can also use negative visualization to prepare for specific challenges. If you have an important presentation, briefly imagine it going poorly and think through how you would handle that situation. If you're starting a new relationship, imagine potential conflicts and consider how you would address them constructively. This isn't pessimism, it's preparation. The key is balance. Don't spend so much time on negative visualization that you become anxious or stop enjoying your life. This should be a brief, occasional practice that enhances your appreciation and preparedness, not a constant source of worry. Most people avoid thinking about potential losses because they think it will make them more anxious. But the opposite is usually true. When you've mentally prepared for difficulties, they're less shocking and overwhelming when they occur. You've already thought through how you would respond, so you can focus on taking action rather than being paralyzed by surprise and emotion. Strategy number 8 is to serve something greater than yourself. The Stoics understood that meaning and fulfillment come not from what you get from life, but from what you contribute to it. When your primary focus is on serving your community, your family, your principles, or your highest ideals, you develop a sense of purpose that external circumstances cannot touch. This is particularly important in our individualistic culture, where we're often encouraged to focus primarily on our own happiness, success, and self-actualization. But focusing exclusively on yourself is a recipe for emptiness and anxiety. When your entire sense of meaning depends on your personal circumstances, you become fragile and self-absorbed. Service to something greater provides stability and perspective that pure self-focus cannot. When you're having a difficult day, you can still find meaning in helping others or contributing to causes you believe in. When your personal goals are frustrated, you can still feel valuable by making a positive difference in the world. When you're struggling with your own problems, serving others often provides clarity and reminds you of what really matters. This doesn't mean you should neglect your own needs or become a martyr. It means expanding your definition of success and happiness to include your positive impact on others. The Stoics believed that humans are naturally social beings who find their highest fulfillment in contributing to the common good. Marcus Aurelius, despite being the most powerful person in the world, constantly reminded himself that his purpose was to serve the Roman people and contribute to human flourishing. This sense of service gave his life meaning even during periods of war, plague, and personal loss. You don't need to be in a position of great power to serve something greater than yourself. You can mentor younger people in your field. You can volunteer for causes you believe in. You can be the kind of parent, friend, or colleague who makes other people's lives better. You can create art, build businesses, or solve problems that benefit your community. The key is to regularly ask yourself, how can I use my talents, resources, and energy to make a positive difference? What problems can I help solve? What value can I create for others? How can I leave the world a little better than I found it? When service becomes a central part of your identity, you develop what Viktor Frankl called meaning-centered, rather than pleasure-centered or success-centered motivation. This type of motivation is more sustainable and fulfilling because it connects you to something larger and more enduring than your personal circumstances. Service also develops humility and perspective. When you're focused on helping others, you spend less time dwelling on your own problems and more time taking constructive action. You realize that everyone is struggling with something, which makes you more compassionate and less self-absorbed. Strategy number 9 is to live according to your nature as a rational social being. The Stoics believed that happiness and fulfillment come from living in harmony with your essential nature, and they identified 2 key aspects of human nature. We are rational beings capable of wisdom and virtue, and we are social beings who thrive in community with others. Living according to reason means making decisions based on careful thinking rather than emotion, impulse, or social pressure. It means seeking truth rather than comfortable illusions. It means taking responsibility for your choices rather than blaming others or making excuses. It means developing the mental discipline to think clearly even under pressure. Most people are controlled by their emotions, impulses, and unconscious reactions. They make decisions based on how they feel in the moment rather than what they know is right or wise. But feelings are temporary and often misleading. What you feel like doing is not always what you should do. What seems important when you're emotional often isn't important when you're thinking clearly. The practice of living rationally doesn't mean becoming cold or unemotional. It means developing the ability to step back from your immediate emotional reactions and make decisions based on your values and long-term well-being. It means recognizing that you are not your thoughts or emotions. You are the consciousness that observes them and chooses how to respond. Living according to your social nature means recognizing that your well-being is connected to the well-being of others. It means treating people with respect and kindness, not because they deserve it based on their behavior, but because treating others well is part of living according to virtue. It means contributing to your community and helping others flourish. Many people in our individualistic culture try to find happiness through purely selfish pursuits. But this approach ultimately fails because it goes against our social nature. We are designed to live in relationship with others, to care about their well-being, and to find meaning through connection and contribution. Here's how to start living more according to your rational and social nature today. Before making any important decision, pause and ask yourself, what would the wisest version of myself do in this situation? What choice aligns with my deepest values rather than my immediate impulses? How can I act in a way that benefits both myself and others? Develop daily practices that strengthen your rational capabilities. Read books that challenge your thinking. Engage in difficult conversations. Question your assumptions. Learn new skills. Reflect on your experiences. Meditation and journaling are particularly powerful practices for developing the ability to observe your thoughts and emotions without being controlled by them. Strengthen your social nature by actively contributing to others' well-being. Practice kindness even when you don't feel like it. Listen more than you speak. Help without expecting anything in return. Treat everyone with basic dignity regardless of their status or how they treat you. When you align your daily choices with your rational and social nature, you experience what the Stoics called eudaimonia, often translated as happiness, but more accurately understood as human flourishing. This isn't the temporary pleasure that comes from getting what you want. It's the deep satisfaction that comes from becoming who you're meant to be. Strategy number 10 is to practice memento mori, remembering that your time is limited. This isn't about becoming morbid or anxious about death. It's about using the reality of mortality to create urgency, perspective, and gratitude in your daily life. When you truly accept that your time is finite, you stop wasting it on things that don't matter and start investing it in things that do. Most people live as if they have unlimited time. They procrastinate on important goals, delay difficult conversations, and spend years in jobs or relationships that don't fulfill them. They assume they'll have time later to pursue their dreams, repair damaged relationships, or become the person they want to be. But later isn't guaranteed, and this assumption leads to a life of perpetual postponement. The Stoics kept death in mind, not to become paralyzed by fear, but to become motivated by purpose. Marcus Aurelius regularly reminded himself that he could die at any moment, and this awareness helped him focus on what truly mattered. Seneca wrote extensively about the brevity of life and how to make the most of the time we have. When you remember that your days are numbered, trivial concerns lose their power over you. The person who cut you off in traffic, the co-worker who took credit for your idea, the friend who forgot your birthday, these things become insignificant compared to the precious opportunity you have to live with purpose and meaning today. Memento mori also creates gratitude for the time you do have. Instead of taking another day for granted, you appreciate it as the gift it is. Instead of focusing on what you lack, you focus on the opportunity you have to experience life, contribute to others, and grow as a person. Here's how to practice memento mori in a healthy way. Each morning, remind yourself that this day is not guaranteed to anyone. Ask yourself, if this were my last day, how would I want to spend it? What would I want to say to the people I love? How would I want to show up in the world? This isn't meant to create anxiety, but to create clarity about your priorities. Use this awareness to make better decisions about how you spend your time and energy. Say no to commitments that don't align with your values. Say yes to opportunities for growth and connection. Express your love and appreciation more freely. Take calculated risks in pursuit of meaningful goals. Stop waiting for perfect conditions to start living the life you want. Memento mori also helps you maintain perspective during difficult times. When you're facing a challenge or setback, remember that this too is temporary. Your problems, like your time, are limited. This can help you endure difficulties with more grace and less drama. The goal isn't to become obsessed with death or live in fear of it. The goal is to let the reality of mortality inspire you to live more fully, love more freely, and contribute more meaningfully while you have the chance. Every day you wake up is a day that someone else didn't get. What will you do with this precious gift? Strategy number 11 is to maintain your inner citadel, that unassailable fortress of peace and strength that exists within you, regardless of external circumstances. This is perhaps the most advanced Stoic concept, but also the most powerful. Your inner citadel is the place where your true self resides, where your values live, where you make your choices, and where you find your peace. No one can touch it without your permission. Epictetus, who understood oppression better than most, taught that even a slave could be free if he maintained his inner citadel. Physical chains could bind his body, but they could not bind his mind, his values, or his ability to choose his responses. External circumstances could affect his comfort, but they could not affect his character unless he allowed them to. Your inner citadel is built from the daily practice of all the strategies we've discussed. Every time you focus on what you can control instead of what you can't, you strengthen its walls. Every time you choose virtue over victory, you reinforce its foundation. Every time you embrace challenges as opportunities for growth, you expand its territory. Every time you serve something greater than yourself, you connect it to sources of meaning that external circumstances cannot touch. Most people have no inner citadel because they've never learned to distinguish between their external circumstances and their internal responses. They let other people's opinions determine their self-worth. They let temporary setbacks destroy their motivation. They let external pressures override their values. They've essentially given other people and external circumstances the keys to their happiness and peace of mind. But when you maintain a strong inner citadel, you become genuinely independent, not antisocial or selfish, but internally free. You can engage fully with the world without being controlled by it. You can care deeply about outcomes without being devastated when they don't go your way. You can love people without needing them to validate you. You can work toward goals without deriving your identity from whether you achieve them. Here's how to start building your inner citadel today. First, identify your core values, the principles that define who you are, regardless of what happens to you. Write them down, memorize them. Refer to them when making decisions. Let them guide your choices even when following them is difficult or unpopular. Second, develop a daily practice of spending time alone with your own thoughts. This could be meditation, journaling, prayer, or simply quiet reflection. The goal is to strengthen your connection to your inner self and your ability to find peace and clarity independent of external stimulation or validation. Third, practice making decisions based on your internal compass rather than external pressure. When facing a choice, ask yourself, what would I do if no one was watching? What choice aligns with my values? What decision would I respect myself for making? Then follow that guidance even if others don't understand or approve. Fourth, develop the habit of finding your worth in who you are, rather than what you achieve or what others think of you. Your value as a person is not determined by your success, your popularity, your appearance, or your possessions. It's determined by your character, your choices, and your commitment to living according to your highest ideals. The strength of your inner citadel is tested during difficult times. When you face criticism, setbacks, loss, or betrayal, do you maintain your inner peace and continue acting according to your values? Or do you become reactive, bitter, and controlled by circumstances? The stronger your inner citadel, the more stable and resilient you become. This doesn't mean you become indifferent or detached from life. It means you engage with life from a position of strength rather than need. You participate fully without being desperate. You care deeply without being attached to specific outcomes. You love freely without being dependent on receiving love in return. Now you might be feeling overwhelmed by all of these strategies. 11 different practices to implement, each requiring significant changes in how you think and act. But here's the beautiful thing about Stoic philosophy. All of these strategies support and reinforce each other. As you practice one, the others become easier. As you develop one area of strength, it naturally spreads to other areas. Start with the strategy that resonates most strongly with you or addresses your biggest current challenge. Focus on that one practice for a week or a month until it begins to feel natural. Then gradually add other strategies. Remember, this is not about perfection, it's about progress. Every small step you take toward living these principles makes you stronger, wiser, and more resilient. The Stoics understood that becoming your best self is not a destination, it's a daily practice. There is no finish line where you can say you've arrived and stop growing. Every day presents new opportunities to practice virtue, face challenges with courage, and contribute to something greater than yourself. Every day is a chance to strengthen your character and deepen your wisdom. But you don't have to wait until you've mastered all 11 strategies to start experiencing their benefits. The moment you begin focusing on what you can control instead of what you can't, you'll feel more empowered. The moment you start embracing challenges as opportunities for growth, you'll become more resilient. The moment you begin serving something greater than yourself, you'll find deeper meaning and purpose. These aren't just ancient philosophical concepts, they're practical tools for navigating the complexities and challenges of modern life. They work whether you're dealing with career setbacks, relationship problems, health challenges, financial stress, or any other difficulty life throws at you. They work because they're based on timeless truths about human nature and what it takes to live a fulfilling life. The person you become through practicing these strategies will be fundamentally different from who you are today. Not different in external circumstances, though those may change too, but different in character, wisdom, and inner strength. You'll be someone who can handle whatever life brings with grace and courage. You'll be someone who finds meaning and purpose regardless of circumstances. You'll be someone who contributes positively to the world while maintaining inner peace and genuine confidence. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, but it begins the moment you decide to take complete responsibility for your thoughts, choices, and responses. It begins when you stop waiting for external circumstances to change and start changing yourself from the inside out. It begins when you commit to the daily practice of becoming the person you've always known you could be. Your best self is not some distant ideal that you might reach someday if conditions are perfect. Your best self is who you become through the daily practice of these principles, starting right now with whatever circumstances you're currently facing. Every moment is an opportunity to practice virtue, every challenge is a chance to build strength, and every day is a gift to be used in service of something greater than yourself. The Stoics believed that the only true wealth is wisdom, the only true security is virtue, and the only true success is becoming fully yourself. These things cannot be taken from you by external circumstances. They cannot be diminished by other people's actions. They cannot be lost through failure or misfortune. They can only be built through the daily choice to live according to principles that have guided the strongest and wisest humans throughout history. So here's your challenge. Choose one of these 11 strategies and commit to practicing it for the next 7 days. Not perfectly, not without mistakes, but consistently and with genuine effort. Notice how it affects your thoughts, your responses, and your sense of inner strength. Then, regardless of what happens during those 7 days, regardless of whether external circumstances go your way or not, you'll have succeeded at the most important thing, becoming more of who you're meant to be. The journey to becoming your best self starts with a single step, and that step is available to you right now. The only question is, will you take it?